Angela Ng was born on May 10, 2009, the only child of Annabelle and Kenbian. In 2020, 11-year-old Angela lived with her parents in Davie, Florida. She was described as a happy and active girl who loved to dance and practice martial arts. It was said that her vibrant smile and cheerful nature made her the light of her parents' lives. However, Angela's life took a tragic turn when she was diagnosed with terminal bone cancer in her femur. As she faced rounds of chemotherapy during the height of the pandemic, the harsh realities of the illness replaced her once energetic and playful demeanor. Trips to the park and martial arts classes were exchanged for grueling hospital visits and medical treatments. The situation reached a critical point when it was decided that Angela would need to have her leg amputated on August 28th in a desperate effort to slow the cancer's progression. The date, meant to mark her parents' 27th wedding anniversary, added another layer of heartbreak to an already devastating situation. Kenbian, who worked as a VP of operations at Watsco, struggled profoundly with Angela's diagnosis. Friends and family noted that he could barely speak about her condition without breaking down into tears. The weight of watching his only child suffer took an enormous toll on his emotional state. On the morning of August 10, 2020, just 18 days before the scheduled amputation, tragedy struck. Around 9 a.m., Annabelle was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she suddenly heard gunshots coming from their primary bedroom. She rushed upstairs to find both Angela and Kenbian with gunshot wounds. Angela was already gone, and Kenbian succumbed to his injuries later at the hospital. A neighbor recounted hearing Annabelle's heart-wrenching screams when she discovered the scene. Authorities concluded that Kenbian had taken Angela's life before turning the gun on himself. The incident sparked heated discussions about the line between mercy and murder. Angela's suffering was undeniable, as the cancer had not responded to chemotherapy and she was on the brink of losing her leg. For some, Kenbian's actions, though violent, were seen as an anguished father's attempt to spare his daughter further suffering. Others argued that no matter how dire the circumstances, taking Angela's life was not his decision to make. The complexity of the case prompted a mix of empathy and condemnation, with parents and onlookers grappling with the profound weight of the Ng family's heartbreak. Angela was ultimately cremated, leaving behind the memory of a young girl who once brought joy and light into her home, and a community left to wrestle with the tragedy and its implications. Cathy Small was born on May 30, 1966, and was known for being a devoted mother and a protective older sister. At just 19 years old, Cathy was raising 2 young children and living in Lake Elsinore, California. On the morning of February 22, 1986, a tragic discovery was made in South Pasadena. Police responded to a call about a woman's body lying in the middle of the 800 block of Bank Street. When officers arrived, they found a young woman dressed in a nightgown who had been strangled and stabbed. With no identification on her, she was initially labeled as Jane Doe number 17. However, within a few days, a man from Lake Elsinore who had seen a newspaper article about the murder contacted investigators and identified Cathy as the victim. He described her as a friend and mentioned that she had been staying at his home for the past few months. According to him, Cathy left his house the night before wearing her nightgown, stating she was meeting a man named Bill who had paid her $50 to accompany him to Los Angeles. Despite the early leads, Cathy's case went cold for nearly 4 decades. Thankfully, crucial biological evidence had been preserved from the original investigation. In 2019, Detective Louis Aguilera received a call from coroner investigator Brenda Schaefer about the suspicious death of a 63-year-old man in South Pasadena. The man had died of natural causes, but what detectives found in his home would reignite Cathy's case. Among the disturbing items in the home were numerous photographs of women who appeared drugged and assaulted, as well as a newspaper article from 1986 detailing Cathy's murder. Although the deceased man's DNA did not match the evidence from Cathy's case, the unsettling discovery prompted detectives to re-examine all the evidence, including items that had not been tested for DNA before. In August 2020, forensic analysis revealed DNA from 2 male donors on Cathy's clothing. One of these matches led detectives to William Lester Suff, a convicted serial killer also known as the Riverside Prostitute Killer or the Lake Elsinore Killer. Suff was already serving a death sentence at San Quentin State Prison for the murders of 12 women in Riverside County between 1989 and 1991. Detectives visited San Quentin in May 2022 to interview Suff. Over 2 days and 7 hours, Suff was presented with the DNA evidence and confessed to Cathy's murder. He recounted how he picked her up from her home on February 21, 1986, under the guise of driving her to Pasadena. According to Suff, an argument ensued during the drive, during which Cathy knocked his glasses off. In a fit of rage, he fatally stabbed her before pushing her body out of the car onto Bank Street. Suff, who had a history of horrific crimes involving the sexual assault, torture, stabbing, strangulation, and mutilation of his victims, had finally admitted to Cathy's murder. As of today, Suff remains on death row at San Quentin for his brutal killing spree in the 1980s and early 1990s. Cathy's tragic story serves as a reminder of the resilience and determination of investigators who never gave up seeking justice for her and others who fell victim to predators like Suff. As of November 2024, Suff remains incarcerated, facing the consequences of his brutal actions. Elizabeth K. Olten was born on December 15, 1999, and was known as a bright and lively fourth grader. At just 9 years old, Elizabeth lived in Jefferson City, Missouri, where her family and friends cherished her. Unfortunately, in the fall of 2009, her life came to a tragic and horrifying end. On October 21, 2009, Elizabeth begged her mother for permission to go play with a neighbor girl who lived 4 houses down, and she agreed. Sadly, it would be the worst mistake of her life. Unfortunately, after leaving, Elizabeth was never seen alive again. When she failed to return, her mother quickly reported her missing. Over the next 2 days, investigators pieced together Elizabeth's movements on the evening she went missing and discovered that she was last seen with her friend's older sister, 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante. On October 23rd, police questioned Alyssa, who shockingly confessed to murdering Elizabeth.
She died.
How did she die? 9-year-old girls don't just die.
We were messing around. And she fell back and hit her head.
Was her throat cut?
Yeah. Oh. I can't believe.
Grandma?
Oh my God.
Listen, I think you dug the hole ahead of time because you knew you were going to kill Elizabeth. I think you tried to dig the hole, like I said, and realized it was too hard to dig down that far.
She told investigators that on the day Elizabeth disappeared, she saw her playing with her younger sister and approached and told her she had a surprise for her and led her into the woods. Sadly, Elizabeth, trusting and innocent, had no clue what awaited her. Once in the woods, Alyssa strangled her, sliced her neck, and stabbed her multiple times in the chest. She had planned the crime meticulously, having dug a grave in the woods behind her house 5 days earlier. After the murder, she buried Elizabeth's body and covered the grave with leaves and debris. Once she was done giving her confession, she led investigators to Elizabeth's remains, which were found in the shallow, hand-dug grave near their home. Alyssa later admitted that she committed the murder simply to experience what it felt like to take a life. The act was shocking and senseless, sending waves of grief through the entire community. Alyssa's background provided insight into her troubled past. She and her 3 younger siblings were placed in the care of their grandparents, Gary and Karen Brooke, in 2002 due to their mother's struggles with addiction and their father's imprisonment. Friends noted significant changes in Alyssa's behavior beginning around 2007 after she was hospitalized after trying to take her own life. On her YouTube profile, she listed cutting as one of her hobbies and shared photos of herself posing with 2 fingers pointed to her head as if mimicking a gun. The most chilling piece of evidence came from Alyssa's journal entry on the day of the murder, which she had tried to scratch out but was later recovered by investigators. It read, "I just effing killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, oh my God, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kind of nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL." Shockingly, after the murder, Alyssa attended a church dance while police were searching for Elizabeth. Despite her involvement in her local Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, her dark and violent behavior stunned everyone who knew her. Alyssa was indicted and later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of a conditional release in 2024 for the second-degree murder charge. In July 2024, her parole request was denied, and her next hearing is expected to take place in 2029. Even if she were to be paroled for the murder conviction, she would still have an additional 30-year sentence to serve for armed criminal action related to her use of a knife in the killing. Elizabeth's tragic story remains a sobering reminder of the hidden darkness that can exist behind closed doors. Jazzy Porter, who went by Jazzy, was a vibrant, talented woman known for her career as a professional singer. She was described by those who knew her as an outgoing and trusting individual who was devoted to her family and cherished her 4-year-old son, Jeremy. She and Jeremy shared a special bond, even sharing the same birthday. At 35 years old, Jazzy lived in an apartment in the Bronx, where she was also 6 months pregnant with her second child. Tragically, on February 5, 1996, Jazzy was found dead in her apartment. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled in front of her son, who was left alone with his mother's body for 2 to 3 days until a neighbor discovered the horrifying scene. When found, Jeremy was attempting to wipe the blood from his mother's face and shared with investigators that the attacker had threatened to strangle him as well, but ultimately did not. The responsibility of identifying Jazzy's body and comforting Jeremy fell to her brother, adding another layer of heartache to the family's loss. For years, Jazzy's murder remained unsolved, leaving her family searching for answers. The case went cold until 2021, when new information finally came to light. Recorded jailhouse conversations regarding Jazzy's murder were brought to the attention of Detective Robert Klein, who decided to re-examine the case. His thorough review of the evidence led him to find Jazzy's fingernail clippings and scrapings, which had not been tested with modern forensic technology. DNA analysis of the evidence matched 2 unsolved sexual assault cases and identified Gregory Fleetwood, a Bronx man with a violent history, as the primary suspect. Fleetwood had previously been arrested in 1987 for strangling another pregnant woman and was convicted of manslaughter. His original murder charge was reduced, and he was paroled after serving only 7 years in prison. Just 2 years after his release, Fleetwood struck again, and this time killing Jazzy. Investigators believe he may have met Jazzy at a party before following her home and committing the crime. Fleetwood was subsequently indicted for Jazzy's murder, and as of now, awaits trial. Jeremy, now 32, was raised by his maternal grandparents following the loss of his mother. The family faced another devastating blow in 2022 when Jazzy's youngest brother, Jason, was killed during a home robbery gone wrong. Despite the tragedies they have endured, Jazzy's family expressed their gratitude to the Bronx Homicide Squad, particularly Detective Klein, whose determination to bring justice has brought them some solace. As of November 2024, Fleetwood is still awaiting trial. Cathy Halle was born in Detroit, Michigan in February 1960. By age 19, she was living in the Aztec Village apartments in North Aurora, Illinois, and was described as a shy and friendly individual. She also had a steady boyfriend and was well regarded by those who knew her. On March 29, 1979, Cathy left her apartment to pick up her sister from work at a supermarket in the Northgate Shopping Center, just a few miles away. However, she never arrived and tragically crossed paths with a serial killer. When Cathy didn't show up, her sister quickly became alarmed and reported her missing. At 1:30 a.m., police canvassed the apartment complex but found no trace of her car. 2 hours later, Cathy's 1972 Dodge Charger was located at the opposite end of the parking lot. Inside, investigators discovered unsettling signs of violence. Blood pooled on the rubber mat behind the driver's seat, and her purse was found on the apartment complex roof, still containing money. The contents of the purse had been scattered throughout the car, and the dome light had been tampered with the bulb removed. However, there was still no sign of Cathy. 3 weeks later, a boy fishing along the Fox River spotted Cathy's body. The discovery confirmed the worst fears of her family and investigators. Decades passed with no resolution until 2020, when advancements in DNA technology linked Bruce Lindahl, a serial predator, to Cathy's murder. Lindahl was already identified through DNA evidence as the killer of 16-year-old Pamela Maurer, who had been sexually assaulted and murdered in 1976 in Lisle, Illinois. Lindahl's dark history included the 1981 death of Charles Huber Jr., an 18-year-old high school senior. Lindahl died during the attack after accidentally severing his femoral artery while fatally stabbing Charles. His body was found beside Charles's, and investigators ruled his death accidental. Beyond Cathy and Pamela, Lindahl is suspected of involvement in several other cases. Deborah Colliander, who accused him of kidnapping and sexual assault, vanished just days before she was scheduled to testify against him in 1981. Her body was found in a shallow grave in Oswego Township in April 1982, months after Lindahl's death. Although her cause of death could not be determined, it was ruled a homicide. Lindahl is also believed to be connected to the 1979 disappearance of 19-year-old Deborah McCall and the 1977 murder of Elizabeth Drews, both from Downers Grove. And he's a suspect in the 1980 murder of 21-year-old Susan Jabczynski of Aurora, along with potentially 2 other young women. Investigators estimate that Lindahl may have been responsible for up to 12 murders and 9 sexual assaults in the western suburbs of Chicago during the 1970s and early 1980s. Despite his social facade as an intelligent and seemingly functional member of the community, Lindahl harbored a secret, violent life. His approach involved abducting women, taking them to secluded areas, and assaulting and killing them before disposing of their bodies. The sheer number of murders fitting this pattern suggests multiple offenders may have been at work, but Lindahl is strongly suspected in many unsolved cases from that era. As for Cathy, it's believed that he abducted her from the parking lot of her apartment complex, leading to the tragic end of her life.